Okay, we have already checked what is a tree diagram in the syntax analysis. Now it's time for us to check what symbols are used in the syntactic analysis. Let's begin. For example, do you recognize all of them? I hope you can, because we already analyzed them. But let's check a retroalimentation about it. Let's get a little feedback about this. Let's put an example. Sometimes a white cat followed Mike until his house. Can you recognize what is the sentence? Yes, sometimes a white cat followed Mike until his house. Can you recognize if we have any noun phrase? Yes, sometimes a white cat, Mike until his house. Yes. Now let's continue. Do you have any proper noun? Of course, Mike. Remember, all nouns are considered a proper noun. Remember that. Then, we have any noun? Of course, cat and house. We have any verb phrase? Yes, follow Mike until his house. We have any adverb? Yes, sometimes. We have any verb? Yes, follow. Any adjective? White and his. Prepositions? Until. That's right. Any article? Yes. Only that? Any pronoun? No, we don't have any pronoun in this case. We have any prepositional phrase? Yes, until his house. Now, if you can recognize all of them, let's continue with the next part of the symbols used in syntactic analysis. We have 4 topics we are ready to check, but let's begin with the first, ungrammatical sentences. George married Doug. This sentence have any meaning for you? Of course not, because it's ungrammatical. Any ungrammatical sentence are marked with an asterisk after the last word of the sentence. In that case, this sentence is ungrammatical. For that reason, we refer to this an ungrammatical sentence. In this case, we don't have any kind of connectors or any verb. For that reason, the sentence is ungrammatical. Now, let's continue. Yuri saw. Yuri saw have a verb, but the other is correct? Is not. For that reason, we consider this sentence as ungrammatical sentence. For that reason, we mark it as asterisk. Both of them are ungrammatical, and for that reason, we don't need to analyze this, because syntax analysis just before to beginning is ungrammatical. For that reason, we don't need to check these sentences. Now, let's continue with the next topic. Consists of revise as. The brown cat eats a fish. Let's analyze this phrase. This is the noun phrase already checked. The brown cat is the first part. Can you see it? Yes, this part, the brown cat, is the first part. The article, the adjective, adjective, and finally the cat is the noun. Okay. When we check this slash of the, as you can see my cursor, this slash means that this noun phrase is composed by those parts. In this case is the article, the adjective, and the noun. Right. But we have this interesting that optional constituent. For that reason, the adjectives are considered optional constituent because the brown cat eats a fish. It doesn't matter if the cat is small, big, fat, slim, etc. Because the meaning, the weight of the sentence, it doesn't change. Finally, the cat eats a fish, but if we add another adjective, the way of the sentence, it doesn't change. For that reason, we consider the adjectives as an optional constituent. Now, this is our parts we are ready before, and we have similar patterns. Remember these similar patterns because in the tree diagrams syntax analysis, we use a lot of them. For example, the sentence is composed by noun phrase and verb phrases. Yes, it's the most common. And the noun phrases are composed by articles, adjectives, nouns, a comma, pronouns, and comma, a proper noun. Something like that. Verb phrases always are composed by a verb, obviously. Noun phrases, prepositional phrases, because these are optional. The matter of the sentence, it doesn't change. Okay? And the prepositional phrases are composed by a preposition and a phrase. Now, let's continue. In syntax, we are going to check what is considered as a movement rules. We consider movement rules when we change the position of a component of the sentence to create, for example, a question. We call this a movement rule, and is marked with a symbol that marked in red that means moved. Let's check one most common pattern. We have the most common pattern. The subject is composed by a noun phrase, an auxiliary, and a verb phrase. The auxiliary's common use is can, could, should, will, something like that. But these are modal verbs. But you can see already what is the pattern as well to refer. If you see it, let's continue. We have our verbs, follow, help, see. Let's check this topic. For example, we have the first part, but it changed to an auxiliary noun phrase. Can you see already? I put an example. You can see the stars. Okay? But in English, what we do to formulate a question if we have any modal verb? Yes. Can you see the stars? That's right. We call this a movement. We call this a moved position. The matter of the sentence, it wasn't changed only by two components. The noun phrase and the auxiliary only changed of position, but let's analyze them more carefully. We have this diagram, like the subject, like the sentence is composed by a noun phrase, by pronoun, and finally you, the auxiliary, can, and finally the verb phrase, the verb, see, the noun phrase composed by the stars, obviously composed by article and noun, but we changed that. If you can see any pattern, only the verb phrase, it doesn't change in anything at all, okay? It doesn't change in anything. Only change the position, the auxiliary, and the noun phrase. For that reason, we transposed this affirmative sentence to an interrogative sentence. All of them. It's important to recognize because we save a lot of time to check it out, okay? Now, let's continue. We have already the complement phrases. We call complement phrases at those when we have already a subject and add another question and add other sentence. We call this a complement phrase. We in Mark CP works like that and what are considered as complementizers. We mark in C. Now let's continue. We have these common patterns. The subject, like obviously, is composed by a noun phrase and verb phrase, as always. And the verb phrases, when we have complement phrases, are composed by a verb and the complement phrase. And the complement phrase are composed by the complementizer and the subject. Let's put an example. John believed that Katie knew that Mary helped George. Okay? First of all, what kind of sentence is this? Because we have already three clauses, we call this a complex sentence because it's compounded by three clauses. And for that reason, because it's composed for three clauses, we need to create this tree diagram. It's really a lot of lines and information, but if we analyze it carefully, it's easy to resolve. For example, we began with the first. John believed that. John, what is John? It's a noun phrase, okay, but it's a proper noun, John. Then we have a verb phrase compounded by verb, believe, that. And the complement phrase compounded by the complementizer that and the other began sentence continue that something these are compounded directly the complement phrases. Just remember these rules. Generally these has the common patterns because these common patterns we see perfectly in this tree diagram. Remember this, okay? Now, let's practice together. Okay, we have this tree diagram. If you can really recognize all of them, all of the part of the diagram, girl, what means? Yes, we call girl as a noun. Very well. Then, so what is? Yes, it's a verb. And you? Yes, a pronoun. Now, let's continue with the second one. John, what is? We already have the noun phrase. Yes, noun is a proper noun because it's a original name. We call them, okay? Then we have a verb phrase, but the verb phrase are composed by, obviously, a verb that knew, okay? We have the complementary phrase. This is the only hint I gave you. And the complementary phrase are compounded by, yes, a complementizer. The complement phrases are compounded by the complementizers and sentences. Remember that. Under the sentence, what began the sentence in this case? You began the sentence. Can you see it? What is new? Yes, sentences are compounded by a noun phrase, and you what is? A pronoun. Okay. We have the verb phrase. Verb phrase are compounded by a verb, because help it is a verb. Remember this. Okay? Now, we have already another small, literally a small sentence, a no clause. How we call this part? Yes, a noun phrase. The what is? Can you remember? Yes, it's an article. And finally, yes, small is an adjective. Can you respond everything? If you did it, very well. You really are a great analyzer. This is all for me. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that your syntax analysis has improved than before. Thank you very much. See ya!